put on the righteousness as a breastplate, and as a helmet of salvation upon his head, and he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and he was clad with a zeal as a cloak. And according to their deeds, according he will repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense. Now that's talking about the Gentile nations. And so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun, which the sun rises in the east. And when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. So therefore his own arm brought salvation for him. God waited and waited for a disobedient Israel to turn to him. He waited and waited for a man to lead them back to him, or an intercessor to plead before him. But nobody stood up to take the place. If a man or an intercessor, I believe, would have stepped up forth, it would have saved Israel a whole lot of misfortune. Now we know that he had people that were go-betweens like Moses we know that Isaiah here's one. Jeremiah was one that interceded, crying out for the people. But it was all temporary. God had to have somebody that was going to stand up that could be that constant intercessor. He waited to work in partnership through a man. He waited to work through an intercessor, but God's work would still go forth if none arose. Mm-hmm. Now that's the point I want to make out of this. It could have been, somebody might have even had the intention, well, I'll be the intercessor, but they would have only been the intercessor as long as they were alive, because they're flesh and blood. You see, and they're still covered and still have this sinful blood running through their veins. And it says that he put on a righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation. No man stepped forward to work with the Lord. So what does the Lord do? The Lord goes ahead and puts on the armor for us and goes forth to destroy his enemies and protect his people. And what does he do? He brings glory to his name. That's the reason I read that in Ephesians this morning. Paul told us to put on the whole armor of God. And if it's God's armor, in the sense that it belongs to him, after he uses it here in Isaiah, then he's allowing you and I to put it on to fight for him too. We have it. And we see a connection. If we don't put on the whole armor of God and fight for him, then eventually God will put on himself, and fight for his own glory. But God's preference is that to work in and through us using his armor. Don't fear. Don't have this apathy or this I don't care about God. You've got to put on that whole armor of God. And it's not my armor. Sometimes I think that people get this in their minds. Well, that's talking about me going out here and putting on my own righteousness, my own protection. I've got to go to Jesus Christ and say, Lord, you got to clothe me. You got to give me the power, or I can't do it. Mm-hmm. So they fear in the name of the Lord from the west, and from the glory of the rising of the sun, or the east. And this shows that the end result will be wonderful in his ultimate victory. He wants us to share in and accomplish, and he's going to do it with or without us. So when no man could do it, he took it upon himself to do it. The glory of the Lord will be known and respected throughout the entire world. Now, it doesn't matter what man says about Jesus Christ. It's all about Christ. It's all about what God thinks this morning. It's not about what Larry Justice thinks. It's not about what South Fork thinks. It's about what God thinks about this morning.